let them talk if they want to.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And our guest, Joshua Freed. Welcome, Joshua, back to Let Them Talk.
Great to be back.
All right, great. And our studio, we're in a slightly different studio on the other side of
Beautiful.
town. It's beautiful, right? Everything is so nice here. We have a producer and everything. Wow, it's great. Well, we're going to talk about music. And you know, that's a heavy subject because it has a lot of implications. We were just discussing a moment ago before we went on the air, all the implications involved with making music. You know, there's legal implications and journalism and all these things. We're going to talk about that later on. We're going to show some videos about your work. But first, tell us what you're playing, what's happening that you're getting ready for. What are we talking about?
Okay.
1 week to go.
1 week left. I'm doing a crowdsourced fund to make an album. Mm-hmm. It's like Kickstarter, only I'm working with a non-profit organization called USA Projects. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like a curated Kickstarter. And one of the best things about it is the people at USA Projects helped me put together my video and my pitch. Mm-hmm. And basically what I want to do is to create an album that stays completely true to my bizarre way of making music in the past few years. Sure. And
it's a Radio Wonderland album.
It's right? Radio Wonderland Live.
Which we love, yes.
Right, and Radio Wonderland, which hopefully we'll see some examples, but you can discuss it, right? On the videos is amazing stuff. I think one of the times you were on, you actually brought some of the equipment and, for example, a steering wheel attached to the music production machine.
Right, right.
So that as you spun the machine and it fooled around with all these odd contraptions, shoes, right, everything, right, it made sounds, right?
And sampling from FM radio.
Yes, sampling from commercial FM radio.
Which is one of the key elements to the whole thing.
Oh, yes, and one of the reasons why the album is important to me is because it is going to take that sampling of radio out of the performance art context. No shoes, no wheel, no me on stage trying to be likable. Just what I've done with the radio. In a way, that's more of the
just the
pure
sound.
test. Yeah. And people would expect me.
Because the performance is a sort of 360 thing. It's that there's visuals, there's sound, there's all sorts of parts to it. Yes.
Yes, it's a whole performance thing. And when I get on stage, I make my collages of radio step by step. So you can hear me making grooves out of radio.
Happening live. The creation of the piece is happening live.
So it's the most engaging way to show people this is how you can collage what is otherwise noxious commercial media. Mm-hmm. But the album's going to be very different. The album is the test. Can I take the best parts of the live shows out of context? Mm-hmm. And does it really sound like music?
Well, one thing I would say from having seen your live show many times is that to me it all sounds like dance music.
Oh, yes.
For me, there's like a steady thing happening that makes you want to get up and dance along with it. So
once I've put the whole groove together.
Yeah.
So that putting together part is going to be largely absent from the album.
Right.
Except maybe one track will be like a whole concert. Yeah. So it's going to be, here folks, this is dance music made out of radio without the benefit or the crutch of the visual aids or this step-by-step creation. Because I want to hear it that way and share it that way, and it also is going to inform how I proceed in the future. So in addition to probably the most commercial record I've ever done, it's also a flat-out experiment. Because I'm going to try to do as little as possible of the airbrushing and sweetening. It's taken all from live concert
and it has potential to be sort of a turning point in your career as well.
Well, it has the potential. But I am ready to cross that line and see where that potential takes me. Because I've had potential for a long time.
You're ready to realize some potential.
Yeah, and see what the limits are.
All right.
And it's nice to do it this way because it is the debut album of Radio Wonderland. It's not really the magnum opus of Joshua Freed.
Right.
And I like it that way, and some of my best work has been that way, like a set of etudes or a collaboration where I'm working out problems. Which is not to say I shouldn't go grandiose at one point, but this isn't presenting itself like that. This is really like the debut album of the band or the conceptual band, which is just me solo, but it's not anything I want. It's really strictly collages from radio.
Right on. Sounds great.
Well, good. I hope you still feel that way once you hear it.
Okay. Well, we have a video clip, and maybe we could go and watch a couple minutes of this video clip, and then we'll have something to talk about.
Shall I set it up for you?
Yeah, sure. Tell us about what we're going to see.
It is the pitch video, I guess you could say it. It's me explaining to the audience why I want to make an album and how I'm doing it, with lots of little contributions from a crowd.
Okay, great.
And it also explains what Radio Wonderland is, so it's not a bad intro.
Okay, cool. Let's go for it. Okay, let's throw it to the producer, Roberto. Thank you.
If you've ever heard me speak publicly before, I was probably talking about my experimental vocal sextet, either at Lincoln Center or the Brooklyn Academy of Music. But that was now years ago. Since then, I've been performing solo a lot, but not anywhere like Lincoln Center. I've been at electronic art and music festivals and actual nightclubs with drunk people and everything, performing as Radio Wonderland. That's me digitally processing live commercial radio, making it into musical patterns that are truly danceable, live in concert. As this grew, I became amazed. This thing actually works. People were starting to dance. They're dancing to completely random radio, bits of corporate media processed live. I have nothing pre-recorded. It's 100% live. The musical shoes and the musical wheel help me control the computer processing. And so it looks and smells like performance art. With such a visual show, people have been expecting me to make a video. But this has to be first an album. Here's why. The shoes and wheel are just there to seduce people. Once you're sucked in, it's really about how the source and the processing, which happens to be controlled by the shoes and the wheel, become the music, the whole music machine. Now, if I were to make a video, that would prove that I could put on a show. But we already know I can do that. I have 150 hours of recorded live Radio Wonderland audio, making the album from this material, remixing only as much as I have to, so that it works as music. Now that's the quest. That is the proof of concept. Now this is going to be a vinyl album. Consider that Radio Wonderland, the show, is pretty much like one massive free download, only from the airwaves. If the music is not freely downloadable somehow, I'm going to feel like a total hypocrite. So if I'm going to sell anything, it's got to be an album, a physical analog object. And that means vinyl. I'm asking you to help me take the next step in this experiment and achieve this. Most of the money is for mastering and actually pressing vinyl. Only if I get more than the $13,000 can we talk about better production, pressing more copies, remixes, and maybe some kind of video. Now, the last time I had my name on a vinyl record was 1986. If this record sells half of what that one did, it'll sell out. So you might want to reserve your copy now. Seriously, every little bit helps. Thanks for your attention, and thanks for considering this project.
Cool. All right. Well, I love to be able to, that we were able to see some of the equipment that you use, and it's interesting that you told us the secret that the wheel and the shoes are for show. It's the music underneath of it. You could have decided to have slippers and a aircraft stick, right?
For instance, but the wheel is a great controller, and the shoes. Well, instead of slippers, the obvious choice would be to get drum pads that you can buy that are completely reliable, but they're also completely boring and they send the wrong message. The whole arbitrariness and kind of, not so much random, but the arbitrariness of the digital technology, I think, is brought up by the shoes, because it could be anything. You know, you're divorced from the physical materials.
Did you wire those, or you just put shoes over drum pad, or
no? There's little pickups in the heels of the.
So did you make that? You created all that?
I had help. Let me tell you. I did all the programming, and I conceived of it. Sure. When it comes down to like what kind of glue and the solder and the particular gauge wire and all that stuff, and the shoe. I'm sorry, the wheel, the whole mounting thing. That's
right. Those are the technical people.
Yeah.
The mechanical people.
Yeah, as digital technology came to the fore, I went in for it. I started doing music when it was the analog days. Right. And it took me a while to make the adjustment, but I'm completely at home because in the digital world, it's all abstract. It's all kind of made up and arbitrary, and that's better somehow.
Well, you talk about vinyl, talk about analog. I mean, you're making a vinyl record.
Yeah,
vinyl means an old-fashioned record. Like I still have a bunch that I can't play, like stacked in my house.
Turntables are out there and easy to get.
Yeah,
I know.
Now they have
back,
them attached to your computer and stuff.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With the USB cord.
What is it about vinyl that it didn't die? I mean, you would think between CDs, DVDs,
cassette tapes,
and the right, and the internet, and all the things that
why
they have
did
now.
vinyl?
Vinyl is coming back.
Yes, big. Yeah. There's vinyl record stores everywhere. I see them popping up everywhere.
Well, you're in New York City. I don't know if they're popping up everywhere, but it's the one format that really sounds better. Now, there are people who are religious about it. I'm not sure if you can hear the difference unless you have a really good stereo, but it's there, and all the other formats are kind of crappy, or they're sort of disposable on the music's way to getting into your iPod or your computer.
Right.
But the vinyl is really an object unto itself, and for me, it just helps me. Are you going to color
the vinyl?
I don't think so.
Nah. I used to love those punk records around the turn. The 81, 82. They were everywhere, right? Red and blue and paintings and colors.
Oh yeah.
You're going with black. Huh?
I'm going with a high quality. Yeah.
Right. All right. Cool.
It has to be an object.
All right. How much does a vinyl record sell for these days? This is for information. I'm not plugging you.
I don't know how much I'm going to charge for these. I think people sometimes charge $20 for them
because they're a specialty.
Because it's different now.
Right? Yeah. It's a specialty item. Yeah. Now, are you going to have a sleeve? I mean, I used to love.
I don't know about gatefold.
Opening it up like that?
I don't know about that.
Like a Jimi Hendrix album in 1979 or something.
Remember the three-ways?
Yeah. Woodstock, right? And you open up Woodstock and there's an incredible photograph. That was like, I loved it, and the photo, it was, the artist really had power in those days.
I'll tell you what I am thinking of is maybe unusual cutting of the record. I think I might want to do a vinyl loop in the inner groove. You know about that? The Beatles actually did that in Sgt. Pepper.
No, I don't know about
the British pressing of Sgt. Pepper had a loop of sound in the very last groove that would go around forever.
Oh, wow.
Public Image did that on Metal Box. And was it? Oh, I'm not going to remember, but there's one group in the 80s that had a double groove so that when you put down the needle, it would either find its way onto one spiral or another. So it was like a three-sided record. So I'm thinking of that kind of thing.
Okay, cool.
Wow.
But I don't know about the gatefold, and a lot of it has to do with budget and doing it right.
You're concentrating on the record itself.
I'm sorry?
You're concentrating on the record itself.
Yes. Now I'm concentrating on the possibility.
You said shape. I was thinking maybe I saw a square one. I remember they used to have square ones. And
how do you do a square one?
It's round.
Smaller.
It's round inside of the square, but it revolves around as a square. It's sort of interesting.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Absolutely.
Well, there's so much to think about.
Right. There's a lot of
now, what about the sampling from the radio? Like,
you mean, did I get in trouble? Or
like, are there any legal ramifications about making something besides a live performance out of that?
Well, we'll find out. It turns out that most of the material that I'm going to be using doesn't have a lot of recognizable samples.
And is there like a length that's permissible?
No, that's a myth.
Urban legend.
It has to do with whether you're trading on someone else's good works. But, well, first of all, I believe that this is worthy art, and I'm willing to go to the mat to defend that. And there's this thing called fair use.
Yeah.
But also, it seems like it doesn't matter until it matters. Like Kanye West just got caught borrowing from some more obscure dance record, but he didn't stop himself from doing it. I think what happens a lot is that people do what they're going to do, and then they deal with it afterwards.
Right. Now, if somebody comes forward and says, "Hey, that's mine."
Yeah. Now I know this contradicts
David Peel.
Oh, really?
Our friend, David Peel.
Not the David Peel.
No, the David Peel. What happened was Cypress Hill made an album, and they took a cut from one of his albums, Have a Marijuana or one of the clips of that. Of his,
right.
Like really,
David Peel and the, what was
right,
it?
Lower East Side,
yes.
right? And it was one of those kind of clips he took from one of his albums, and it was in the middle of a more rappy type of thing that this Cypress Hill was doing.
Right.
Completely obvious it was David.
Right, obviously.
Right.
It was David yelling something, and they clipped it. And David, he wanted the money. He lives off of that, so he made them pay him. They thought he'd be proud. Like, oh, you're on a Cypress Hill record, and he was going to be, no, I want the $5,000.
And be proud.
And to be proud, right? He made them pay him $5,000.
You know, it's funny you mention that, because I was going to mention that in mainstream hip hop, and I think they qualify because they're big, Cypress Hill, there is a procedure and even a department in the record companies to clear samples.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't have the last word on which practice is more prevalent, but I know how I'm going to go, and I'm not too worried at this point.
Yeah.
And what I found out in my life in the music business in the 80s was that it's not so much what the contract says as who it is that's signing the contract and the kind of leverage that they have. Even though you sweat over that contract, in the end, it kind of doesn't matter. At least that's what I found.
It depends on who's signing the contract, what connections they have, and what doors they can open.
Yeah, and how they can, if on the off chance some dispute happens, who they have on their sides and their armament of.
Now, do you want to give out your website or any information like that where people can find, all of this?
It's probably easiest to go to radiowonderland.com.
Yeah, that's
but I'm also I'm on Facebook. RadioWonderland.org works as well. You can Google me.
Have you ever had a radio show?
Well, I have a radio show, actually.
Yes, I know, because I've listened.
Oh, excellent.
Tell us about your radio show.
Oh, yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
I perform on the radio every week, Saturday mornings in New York, but it's also on the internet. So it's Saturday afternoons in Europe and Saturday night or early Sunday morning in Asia. And I perform live in my studio, sampling New York City radio live with the shoes and the wheel in my studio. And it gets streamed over the internet by WGXC, which is a great community radio station in the Hudson Valley in New York.
All right.
And also on WGXC.org.
But so you do it do you have a landline or ISDN line or something like that with them?
Well, I have high-speed internet.
All connection to their...
It's good enough.
Cool.
Yeah.
It works.
That works.
Yeah. So I stream to the station, and then they stream hence to the world.
Wow.
And you can actually, if you follow me on Twitter at Radio Wonderland or Facebook me or go to my site, you can actually find the link to my direct stream, which I think would be a little bit better quality than the restream thing.
Yeah, to listen live.
And that's also broadcast over an antenna somewhere in the Hudson Valley.
It is broadcast over the actual terrestrial airwaves.
That's cool. So people can hang in and hear it in their car
while they're doing their grocery shopping.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what radio really delivers. I mean, that ability to be in a person's car.
I'm excited. I like the idea that there's some kid who doesn't know how to drive yet, who's hanging around Saturday mornings, finds this and is intrigued, because that was a lot of my formative development is radio.
Let's take a minute or two. Tell us how you got into this. How did you get into doing performance art music, for lack of a better term?
You know, I became so early on fascinated by what I could do live. I would be just in an electronic music studio alone, somewhat intoxicated, and I got obsessed with this idea of setting up a situation where it would just go and I would manipulate it, almost like I was conducting, but I was composing.
Right.
And it was the most amazing period of my life, because somehow I managed to convince myself at the very beginning that I wasn't composing. Because that would have just strangled me, because I did not have the greatness.
Right.
Yeah, so I just thought that I was hanging out, partying, and playing, and making this machine. And then when a dancer said, "Can I use your music?" all of a sudden, the chinks began to show up in my armor.
Music.
Yeah, I guess I must have composed that.
Right.
And that has always been with me, using electronics to somehow do something that's very live and of the moment. And I started pulling in commercial media really early on as well. And this idea of bringing it in as something familiar, cutting it up, hearing it in a new way, and collaging from there, and hearing music in it.
Which do you like better, AM or FM?
FM. FM. Because you might think that since I'm cutting it up into a million little bits, static doesn't matter, hi-fi doesn't matter, because it all just becomes more percussive or more flavorful. But it's not true.
That was what I was thinking.
Yeah, I would think so too. I thought so too until I started dealing with it. But the more clarity, the more subtle differences there are between two little bits of radio that were originally right next to each other. And that gives it the whole range of colors and tones. And I really need that. I'm not against static, and I sample it sometimes, but it's all about the subtle differences. I take one bar or one sentence of somebody, cut it up, and you hear melodies in it because of those differences.
I think it's iMovie or one of those programs I use it once in a while. It actually has a AM static transition.
Yeah.
It's called AM static, and it's a transition you can use. It's cool.
Yeah, that's right.
And it has that transitional, like you're changing the dial and something new is happening.
And now that's become a special effect based on something that people have barely experienced themselves.
Right. Well, on the car you would feel it as you were in the old days before satellite radio. Now satellite radio, you don't have that at all.
You don't have to do that.
Not at all. It goes straight to the thing.
Twisting the dial.
Right, but you know, my problem with satellite radios, as we're on the subject, is that one type of music all the time is boring.
Right, they don't have
on each station.
Yes, that's what I love about radio is that, you know, when you're driving, is that, you know, even within a genre, there's different things you can hear. Right,
within the playlist, within the format.
Even if you hate it, at least it's something different. Listening to 6 hours of the Grateful Dead, or 6 hours of the Rolling Stones,
or country music,
4 hours of
opera,
You're just doing this to get the phone calls. Is that it? You're calling out these different kinds of music
that you can't listen to for 6 hours.
6 straight hours. Oh God. So, but what you're doing is great. I mean, and we have another. You have another clip that we could show.
There's a clip of me demonstrating the gear.
We're going to see the clip. Let's see what it looks like. What you do.
Definitely watch that.
Let's watch that.
It's the show and tell.
This is great.
Okay.
I'm Joshua, also known as Radio Wonderland, and I do live processing of live radio. It's all processed in the computer in my software, which I wrote in Max MSP, but the computer processing is controlled by a steering wheel, shoes that are mounted on stands, and a fader box and 2 foot pedals. So I start with a boombox, and then I plug it into my gear, and then I start grabbing stuff from the radio.
Reputation of kind of being barbarians, kind of being barbarians.
You might have heard of the de-esser, which gets rid of excess sibilance, but the re-esser is my invention, and it takes away everything except for the sibilance.
Being barbarian.
And now I impose my tempo on those little sibilant sounds that I got. But let me go back to the radio. I think I'd like to take that piece of Led Zeppelin and morph it in the direction of a kick drum. So I'm using FFT, fast Fourier transform, or spectral processing you could call it, to take the timbral information of that piece of Led Zeppelin and morph it into a kick drum-like direction. So there's your basic house groove made out of radio. But I want more material, so let's see what's on the radio. I take my piece of radio and I then cut it up using what I call the reshuffler. So here's the groove with a little extra bit of sliced up radio that I can transpose with the steering wheel.
Well, Joshua Freed. That's a little bit of that clip and showing you how showing the viewers how you create the music.
Right, under the hood.
Under the hood, and it's really about writing code, writing software, which you teach.
Yeah. Yes, in fact.
And you have a professor. You're academic.
Yes, I'm an adjunct at NYU.
But
adjuncts do the heavy lifting.
Right, and they sure do. The teaching, in other words.
Yes.
Yes, the actual work. Teaching. Yes.
Right. And
well,
so
research is work, and meetings are work.
And you were discussing how, and you've also lectured to high school students as well as college.
I have,
yes.
yeah. And even younger than high school students.
Wow. And what was
your
reaction?
You're very open to letting kids play with this equipment. Because I was at one show where we brought Paul's children, as a matter of fact, and I mean, they were beside themselves.
Oh, which show was that? One of the outdoors?
No, it was inside. Where was that, Paul?
Down the Lower East Side somewhere, below House Center.
But everyone came down on stage at the end, and you let some of the kids play with it.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, the Flea Theater.
Yeah, the Flea Theater.
That was it.
That was it.
Yeah, no, that stuff is pretty rugged.
Right, and they were spinning it around. They loved it. They could make that sound and use it.
So remind people again how to look you up and
I'm glad
find
you asked.
about the work and about the upcoming album.
Yes, the upcoming album won't happen without your help. And there's 1 week left to express that support. And just go to RadioWonderland.org, and it's right there, or RadioWonderland.com, or just Google Radio Wonderland. And with your support, then I'll be able to make the vinyl album of that radio-based material.
Right, and as it's a creative, you're influencing people and inspiring them.
Oh, gee, good.
I think through the work that you do, and making people love music, and there's nothing that's like the greatest thing in the world, to make people see that there's ability through creative means to change the world. And that's what you've done in a way. You know, you through creative world, you do change the world, because you take the radio that's commercial provided to us, and when it goes through your creative process and comes out on the other side, it's something totally different.
That it is.
Dance music.
Yes, in what better way, right?
What could be better, right?
Okay, last 30 seconds. Can you tell us again how people can get in touch with you one more time?
Oh, yes. Twitter at Radio Wonderland. On the web, RadioWonderland.com. You could Google Radio Wonderland. And also I'm at Facebook.com/Radio Wonderland. And send me a personal message.
Great. And any 5 seconds, any performances coming up?
April 29th at I-Beam with an amazing guitarist named Hans Tommen.
Great.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joshua.
Are we on? Are we off?
That's it.